Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 2 of the 2020 River and Ocean Film Festival. If you didn't catch the introduction in episode 1, or if you missed episode 1 entirely, please go back and check it out. The River and Ocean Film Festival, though, is co-sponsored by the North Pacific Coast Marine Resources Committee and Washington Sea Grant. I'm your host, Ian Miller. I work for Washington Sea Grant. And the River and Ocean Film Festival, typically held in the city of Forks in person at the beautiful Rainforest Arts Center, is being held online this year due to COVID-19. Of course, that means you can enjoy it from the comfort of wherever you're sitting right now. The films in the River and Ocean Film Festival are all short films, 20 minutes or less, and they have to be relevant to the natural or social dimensions of the west end of the Olympic Peninsula in some way. I think you'll find that the 4 films in this episode meet that criteria. Film number 1 in episode 2 is called Coast as Sentinel, Tribal Communities at the Forefront of Ocean Change. It was submitted by Meg Chadsey, my colleague at Washington Sea Grant, and made by Sam Kleinfinger. Like The Power of Kelp, shown in episode 1, this film was also born of the passion of a University of Washington student, Sam Kleinfinger. She was a University of Washington-based program on the environment undergraduate who took on the making of this film as part of what is called a capstone, a major requirement for graduation. After graduation in 2019, Sam was hired by Washington Sea Grant to complete the film, and this is the premiere of this film at the River and Ocean Film Festival. The film itself focuses on a large-scale assessment underway currently by Quinault, Coho, Quileute, and Makah tribes to try to better understand how they will be impacted by ocean acidification. So with that, please enjoy Coast as Sentinel, Tribal Communities at the Forefront of Ocean Change.
The Olympic coast is home to 4 coastal treaty tribes. The people of the Quinault Indian Nation and of the Makah, Coho, and Quileute tribes have lived along these shores since time immemorial. The livelihoods, traditional foods, and cultures of these indigenous communities are deeply rooted in this place. Olympic coast tribes are highly dependent upon fish, shellfish, and other marine resources for their cultural, social, and economic well-being. Tribes' rights to manage and utilize these resources in perpetuity are protected by treaties with the U.S. federal government. But their continued access to these resources is at risk as the chemistry of our ocean changes. Human emissions continue to pump more carbon dioxide into our atmosphere. These CO2 emissions dissolve into our ocean, where they react with seawater to form carbonic acid, a process known as ocean acidification. Acidifying conditions are making the ocean less hospitable to many sensitive marine species upon which the tribes depend.
Manila clams, horse clams, crab, gooey duck, fish, crab, razor clams. They're all important to all of us out here.
Organisms with hard parts made of calcium carbonate, like clams and crabs, have a harder time forming their shells and skeletons, especially during their early larval stages. Ocean acidification also interferes with the ability of coho salmon to sense and respond to the presence of a predator.
As the coastal ecologist at Olympic National Park, I have huge concerns about ocean acidification in terms of 65 miles of coastline, which is a biodiversity hotspot. You know, it's got more species, or arguably more species, of marine invertebrates and seaweeds than any other place on the west coast of North America. And those biota are at great risk to OA, to ocean acidification, as we go into the future.
The Quinault Indian Nation depends upon its coastal resources as they have for millennia, and anything that's out there lurking in the water that could be impacting those is of deep concern. What we don't know is the scariest part. What we do know is frightening.
Ocean acidification is a very serious problem in all the oceans of the world, but its effects are being felt more dramatically on the Olympic coast because of seasonal upwelling. The same upwelled waters that nourish the coastal food web are also naturally higher in dissolved carbon dioxide, meaning they can be more corrosive than surface waters. From above and below, human and natural sources of CO2 are pushing the Olympic coast marine ecosystem towards biological thresholds. To address these issues, the NOAA Ocean Acidification Program launched a 3-year collaborative research project to assess the vulnerability of Washington coastal tribes to ocean acidification. NOAA has been leading coastal cruises, measuring water properties that allow assessment of ocean acidification. And more recently, they've added biological observations. The University of Washington has worked with NOAA to site ocean acidification sensors on buoys along the Olympic coast. One such buoy, known as Cheba, is located off La Push, home of the Quileute tribe. The tribe provided this name, which means whale tail in their language. The Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary also maintains some seasonal buoys, which are located in shallower waters than Cheba. And the Olympic National Park deploys intertidal sensors, so data is being collected at multiple water depths. The park is also monitoring intertidal ecology.
There's also been a lot of work by the coastal tribes. For instance, the Quileute has a nice time record of sampling phytoplankton for harmful algal blooms. And many of the tribes are collecting water quality as well as biological time series. So there's a lot of data, very rich, and that has been useful for several purposes. But what was really exciting about this project and the funding of NOAA is the recognition that to do a regional vulnerability assessment, what we really needed to do is synthesize these data and to put together the various scales, the physical and chemical measurements along with the biological observations, and to look at not only the conditions now, but also the projected conditions through computer modeling.
Another groundbreaking aspect of this NOAA project was the opportunity to integrate this natural science with a new social science collaboration between Washington Sea Grant and Olympic Coast tribes to understand how ocean change may affect these place-based communities.
So in 2017, our tribal partners on this emerging proposal invited me to contribute to lead a social science effort on how ocean acidification would be expected to impact community well-being. We wanted to extend it to a whole comprehensive Olympic Coast region, so we engaged all of the 4 coastal treaty tribes. From the get-go, tribal scientists and managers have really been central in leading the priorities and approach to this research. It's a really dynamic and diverse collaboration with partners from various agencies and institutions. So each of these partners brings their unique perspectives and needs to the project, and any kind of regional study like this requires that we draw from a strong collaboration and diverse knowledges.
Being an Indigenous person in academia and in the research role that I'm currently in, mostly within a Western science framework, I feel that I am able to bring in an Indigenous scholar's perspective within this research, and I really want to ensure that the communities that we work with feel that they are being respected in that process as well.
So as a sanctuary, our mandate is really to help protect the ecological integrity of this very special place. Olympic Coast is really unique as a sanctuary though, because the sanctuary lies within the usual and accustomed harvest areas of 4 coastal treaty tribes. And part of our mission really is to fulfill the federal responsibilities with respect to these treaties, which are very much in force and alive today.
Projects like this, to understand regional impacts on the Olympic Coast, it's essential to partner with tribal governments because they have been here since time immemorial. They have extensive local knowledge on the area and the resources, specific observations on what has changed even in the short history, and then are at the forefront of facing these impacts.
Concerns with ocean acidification for the Makah tribe are really significant because of the reliance upon the marine resources that we have here and the changes that we see from the things that we know. So we know that we're looking at potentially some species not being able to remain in our area and new species coming in, and that really is a huge concern for us.
This strong coalition of public, private, and tribal partners is working together to synthesize all of this oceanographic, biological, and social science data to better understand a path forward to sustainability and resilience.
Since the early 2000s, the sanctuary's long-term oxygen observations have been showing us how bad oxygen conditions can get on the shelf. For species such as Dungeness crabs, these animals are continuously exposed to acidified conditions and then sometimes hit by this hammer of low oxygen conditions that can really be this 1-2 punch they can't escape from. And so the picture that's emerging is both, I think, a really important one for our state as a whole to learn, but also very important for the coastal treaty tribes as well as the state fishing industry to understand as they plan for and learn to adapt to a rapidly changing ocean and climate in our region.
Oceanographer Sam Sidlecki has been developing regional simulations of future ocean conditions based on observed trends of things like dissolved oxygen and carbon dioxide along the Olympic coast.
Each one of these triangles represents one of the moorings that are at the Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary, which have been in the water making observations for a long time and giving us an idea about variability in things like oxygen. This particular visualization encompasses the Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary region that we were just looking at on the previous slide. What we're looking at here is an animation of one of those regional simulations, which provides seasonal forecasts on the timescale of 6 to 9 months for the Washington and Oregon coasts. So all of the warmer colors in each one of these variables, it signifies a stressful condition for some organisms.
In addition to these oceanographic observations and forecasts, this project's drawing on biological data contributed by our coastal partners. One data set that's really representative of this type of information and of the collaborative spirit of this project overall is the razor clam data that are collected by state and tribal partners. These partners, as well as the Olympic National Park, have been monitoring the size and health of razor clam populations along a good portion of the Olympic coast for decades now. And this information has always been considered in a fisheries management context, but not so much in an ocean change context until now.
I think there is an effect right now in the clams because, like you say, I've been digging since 1956. You know, I've been digging since 1956. Since I was 6 years old, 6 years old, I started digging, and I noticed just in the last maybe 4, 5, or 6 years, I noticed that the clams break a little easier when you take them out, because you go down, you grab the clam, and they snap a little bit, they crack a little bit easier. Are they really getting thinner? Are the shells getting thinner? I don't know. I can't tell you for sure, but the only way to find out would be to measure the clams. Like if you find a midden from 1600s and measure the clam.
Razor clams and crab are central to Quileute economy, well-being, and culture. In order to protect community health and well-being, we want to make sure that these shellfish are safe to eat. More than 20 years ago, the Quileute Tribal Council had the foresight to create a water quality shellfish lab here in La Push. That's given us the capacity to track local shellfish health and biotoxin levels.
The razor clams, those are a big part of our lifestyle, both as a food and as a source of revenue. Very few job opportunities, so this offers tribal members an opportunity to go out and supplement their income. But some of these guys can make some really good money on just one clam tide.
We get caught up in these kinds of things, these physical science issues like ocean acidification so often. And yeah, we look at economic impacts. We'll put some broad numbers across that say, oh, this is a value impact to this community out here, dollars and cents and so forth. It's much more than that.
Adding the people into the studies, it really does, I think, allow you to quantify some of those impacts that are not done through monetary or financial resources. A lot of times if you're doing some type of like damage assessment for an oil spill, it typically has to do with a monetary value of a resource, and it doesn't really capture some of those important social aspects. What happens if you don't have, access to fish for a season or two? It gives you an idea of what that might be like over the long run.
Many of these species are what we think of as cultural keystones. That is, they're centrally important to tribal community life. They're important for food customs, identity, social relationships, and a way of life. Identifying what the impacts are to community health and well-being and to the resources in the ocean is really at the heart of our project.
When I go to meetings, I bring smoked salmon, or fresh salmon that's been baked, and I pass it around to the people attending the meetings. And, everybody praises it for the taste and everything, and then I calmly look around the room and I said, this is also a cultural resource, because people just think of trees and things like that when they think about natural resources. They don't consider the spiritual side that a salmon brings to a tribal community.
Through community-based participatory action research, we're identifying unique indicators of health and well-being for each of the respective communities. There are a number of ways that tribes have always adapted and will continue to adapt. For example, tribal canoe journey has been one of the ways for creating and renewing linkages in the larger region between tribes and First Nations that in many cases is also reinvigorating the trade networks. The Quinault Nation has identified a priority for engaging young people, school-age kids, in learning about marine sciences, and inspiring their interests in marine science engages youth in thinking about how to manage these resources for the next generation and for the generations after. The Quileute tribe has identified traditional foods programs as one approach to responding and coping to climate changes. In this particular kind of example, which has been successful in other Northwest tribal communities, a focus on traditional foods could bring a broader, holistic view of community health that ties the land and the sea together.
The process of tribes being able to lead and develop the evolution of these projects is really key for success in ensuring tribal sovereignty and self-determination.
I think if we got the community thinking realistically about alternatives or adaptations that could be made during a time of change, that would be success. I think to just get folks ahead of the curve and having, I think, some real ideas ahead of them in terms of how they might handle those changes.
I think there's some pretty good players in this project. I'm hoping that they come up with something very useful that brings it home to tribes and to others outside of us, outside of coastal communities, so that they can better understand, hey folks, there's people out here that are going to be seriously impacted by this issue. Here's how, and here's the depth of how. It goes beyond, again, monetary impacts. So I'm excited about that aspect of it.
We do have a really great team of people working on this project, but I think what truly sets it up for success is our approach. Since its inception, this project has been about centering the human communities confronted with ocean change and really striving to ensure that they shape the nature and outcomes of the research. We hope others will be inspired by what they've seen in this video to take up this approach in partnership with other place-based communities facing similar challenges. That in itself would be a success.
The second film in episode 2 is called Coho Fight Club, and it was submitted and made by David Hahn. Now, David's films have appeared in all but one of the annual River and Ocean Film Festivals, dating all the way back to the first one. And all of them share a focus on salmon in the Solduck River. David's filmmaking work is motivated by an interest in education, and indeed, many of his films end up as parts of the curriculum at Forks Middle School and other schools. They are notable for their simplicity. They are oftentimes just clips of film he collects from cameras placed in the Solduck River during the salmon run, presented without narration or anything besides the native audio. But that simplicity gives them their power. These are films that fulfill the potential of film to allow us to experience things that most of us don't have the opportunity to firsthand. Please enjoy Coho Fight Club. The third film in episode 2 is called Summer Backpacking at NatureBridge. It was submitted by Ann Schuler, who works for NatureBridge, and made by Modoc Stories. And this short film was created as a marketing and outreach tool by NatureBridge, an education enterprise with a campus on Lake Crescent in Olympic National Park, to promote their summer backpacking programs. This little film really shows, though, a side of the landscape that we live on that is important to many of us, the landscape and the journeys we take on it as a teacher and educator. The film was made by Hood River-based filmmaking outfit Modoc Stories, which is led by two brothers, Michael and David Hansen. One of those brothers, David Hansen, lived and worked here in Olympic National Park for some time, and you can sense that familiarity in the film. Please enjoy Summer Backpacking at NatureBridge.
Coming into this, I was concerned just physically, would I be able to carry a 50-pound pack for however many miles those first few days?
After we came out onto the trail, something just clicked and we all bonded and everything came together.
We don't have outside connections or anything, it's just us, and we have to work with each other.
So I'm Dana Main. I'm one of the educators at NatureBridge Olympic. Over the summer, get to lead wonderful backpacking trips. We have these wonderful national parks as natural classrooms. It's a 2-week program. They spent the first couple days on campus doing all the here's how you backpack and how do you pack a pack and all of that sort of thing, as well as an introduction to science.
It's interesting tying together backpacking and science because you wouldn't think you could learn that much about your environment through backpacking.
At school, we just read all this stuff in textbooks, and you don't really soak it in or think about it more than maybe a day when you're reading it in class. But here, I've been surrounded for the past 8 days straight, and it really means a lot more to me now that I've seen it and experienced it for so long.
Students get to experience just this beautiful national park. They get to hike, they get to explore, they get to bond, they get to team build, but they also get to develop their own curiosity.
Oh, I thought that was a rock! By now, I feel like I could go backpacking by myself.
I've never been anywhere like this. I don't know, it's not about the destination or the distance we've traveled, but I've just seen so much. I think just the knowledge that things are much more vast and expansive than I think them to be, that's enough.
The fourth and final film in episode 2 of the 2020 River and Ocean Film Festival is called Stories from the Blue, Million Waves Project. It was submitted by James Roubal, who works for Washington CoastSavers, and was made by Silver Fir Media. This beautiful and inspiring little film made a big splash when it was first released in 2019, so you may have seen this one before. If you did, though, I'm confident that you will enjoy seeing it again. It's that good. The film itself, made by Silver Fir Media, which is a Seattle-based filmmaking company who also made Tides of Change, a beautiful film that was part of the 2014 River and Ocean Film Festival. The film, though, was produced by the National Marine Sanctuary Program at NOAA as part of their Stories from the Blue series, which tells stories through film about the people and species that rely on the many national marine sanctuaries scattered throughout U.S. waters. This particular film also highlights the partnership between our own sanctuary, the Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary, the Million Waves Project, and Washington CoastSavers, who organize the annual coast cleanup that features in the film. Please enjoy Stories from the Blue, Million Waves Project.
I literally woke up my wife in the middle of the night, which is not uncommon.
Right.
And I just said, hey, I got this idea. I think somebody should do this. Yeah. What if we did this? What if doing something was better than doing nothing? So my name's Chris Moriarty, and this is my wife, Laura, and we were actually the founders of the Million Waves Project.
We are so fortunate to be here at Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary, which is one of the most beautiful and diverse areas in the world. We have the smallest little animals in the world, like plankton, that are abundant off our coast, which brings in some of the largest animals like humpback whales and blue whales, and they all come here to feed, which is why getting the plastics out of the ocean and off the beach is so important. If the plastics stay out there, and it could lead to their death, it could lead to entanglement. So we just want to make sure that we keep this place as special and as natural as possible.
With Million Waves projects, our plan is to try to reclaim as much ocean plastic as possible, and then we actually convert that ocean plastic into filament for 3D printers, and then we use those 3D printers to print limbs. Kind of taking two different concepts, bringing them together to solve two problems at once. We're obviously not the first people who thought about cleaning up the oceans, and we're not the first people who thought about making limbs cheaply for kids and adults who need them, but pretty much one of the first groups to decide to actually bring those two ideas together to try to do as much good as possible. Activated, so this will allow you to open it. Abby is a wonderful little girl. She was born with congenital deformity, so she doesn't have function of her right hand, but is very capable and is amazing what she can do.
I'm really crazy, and I'm like jumping around and climbing trees, and I like doing gymnastics and like flipping around. I really like to go to the beach and go swimming, doing flips off docks.
Everyone's kind of dealing with their own issues, and some children like the attention, some certainly do not. The last thing they want to talk about is maybe why they're different. And Abby, if you spend any time with her, she could care less. You know what I mean? She's just living her life and doing things, and I think it motivates me.
If I were to make the prosthetic do anything, maybe to like hang on to something where it wouldn't come off without it like breaking.
She's really helped inform the projects. She tries things on, she tells us if they're cool or not cool, if they fit, if they don't fit. So it's been phenomenal, and her mom is amazing and has been also kind of informing, the directions that we should go and how to navigate the population of limb-different kids.
Ever since Abby was born, we never treated her different in family. Everybody just looked at her like a normal kid with two hands, and she's a very strong, independent child, and so she just grew up thinking, well, I can do everything. And it's her personality to really conquer everything she does. She wants to be the best. She's really taught us so much about being courageous and being brave. Our family loves to go to the ocean, and now being part of Million Waves, every time we're at the ocean and we see garbage in the water, the kids want to get it out, and it's been really cool how that's impacted them.
The part of the project that I've enjoyed the most is probably for every person that reaches out to us for help, we probably get at least a dozen people asking how they can help. So we kind of have this best side of humanity on display for us every day.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, events like this and partnerships like this, it brings it all right in front of you. I think the sanctuary system to us is probably going to be our number one vehicle to where when all the people ask us what they can do, that's the first place they can go. Because given the fact that there's so many, and there's such a variety of different places that they're protecting and all the ecology around it, people want to do something a little bit more active. So having the sanctuary systems available and so well run as they are, it's easy for people to get involved and go out and put an event together and again, just make their dent.
Right now we're really focusing on events like this and coordinating with volunteers that are already out on the beaches pulling the refuse off. We really want to stick to our core mission of using reclaimed ocean plastics. So we are, in partnership with the Washington CoastSavers and the sanctuary system to potentially, kind of streamline a system to where we're collecting things that they're picking up that we can use.
Washington CoastSavers is a nonprofit formed by many community groups who are dedicated to protecting the coastline and getting marine debris off of the shorelines. We're all connected by the currents, so we have to make sure we do the right thing and try to clean up the beaches as best as possible.
It's stories like this that really make a difference to me because we get to see how we can make a difference and we still have hope and that we can do things that's not only good for the environment but good for people. I'm very proud to be part of this.
Being involved with Million Waves changed me, but I never thought I would need a prosthetic. But once I got started with this, I realized that it was really cool to have one. They're just picking up plastic and then they can turn it into something that could help somebody.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for episode 2 of the 2020 River and Ocean Film Festival. By way of reminder, the film festival this year is being brought to you as a series of 3 episodes. So please watch out for episode 3. Check that out when you have a chance. And if you didn't have a chance to check out episode 1, please do that now. Thank you.